Got a way out of here, says the drunkard to the thief. There's too much confusion, I can't get no relief. There's a man that drank my wine, plowman did my earth. All along the watchtower. Spooky stream? Yeah. Yeah, I decided to make a fire. Unfortunately, it rained for several days last week, or at the beginning of this week, whatever it was. It rained for several days and soaked a lot of the sticks and stuff that were just lying around the property. So, you know, the fire's not as bright as it normally would be on a night like tonight. But we're doing our best to create something useful out of it. It took us forever to get one started, though. Well, we've got a blunt, we've got a pipe, we've got the tobacco pipe, we've got lots of stuff to sit and relax and enjoy our night with. We're going to talk a little bit about the hopefully a little bit about the redistricting battle in Virginia. We'll talk about the overall battle, the just battle in general that's happening in the Persian Gulf, and who knows what else we might end up talking about. But for now, welcome to the stream. Hopefully the light will be a little bit better here in a minute or two once the fire gets catching better. In the meantime, make sure you hit that like button and feel free to provide me some questions in the chat that I can respond to and riff on. Ow! Well, that hurt. Ow, 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 ow. I hate it when that happens. Camping? No, I'm just, ow, I'm in my backyard. Ow, ow, fuck, man. God damn. I burned the absolute shit out of my thumb. UFOs? What about UFOs? They released some stuff about UFOs. I saw that. I didn't look too deep into it, but I saw that they're releasing stuff. Ow! God damn it. Sometimes I hate having a fire, dude. Like, I desperately need to do something to break up the monotony of my fucking life, but, like, on a day like this, when for most of the beginning of this week and most of last week, we were just drenched and inundated by constant fucking rain, the wood really does not want to cooperate with me today. Ow. I'm definitely gonna have to put some aloe on that. Bro, I can't even see you. Well, don't worry too much. Like, don't, like, why are you so worried about what I look like? Number one. Like, ultimately, why is it that important? And number two, like, be patient. I guess if, like, the fire doesn't start giving me adequate lighting in a minute, I can just go get, like, a lantern or something. But, man, I want the fire. That's what I want. There we go. Finally. So here, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna start putting a ton of wood in the periphery. And all this wood will dry out as the fire burns. Anyway, how are you guys doing? Careful, don't burn yourself again. I know, right? It looks terrible with this fire tonight. Do a backflip? No. I'm doing great. And yourself, baby? I'm doing pretty awesome, too. It's my off week, you know, family-wise, so that's cool. I had a super productive day. I was able to get most of what I needed to get done. Like I said, it's the beginning of my off week, so that's awesome. That's always a tremendously wonderful, you know, that is the best night of your week, if that is an arrangement under which you're under. And the fact that I'm able to have a campfire right now is kind of just like drawing a bow over it all. Man, I can hardly talk tonight. Do a barrel roll. I just wish that the fire would stay going enough to fucking keep the shot lit, you know? That's all. That's all I want. I don't feel like I'm asking for much. So, what do we want to talk about, folks? We got the fire, we got a blunt, we got the chat together. So I put in the title, Virginia Strikes Down Democracy, because despite the voters of Virginia approving a new House map, the Supreme Court of Virginia has decided, nah, LOL, JK, your vote doesn't matter. We're actually going to institute a completely different map that completely disenfranchises you. Oopsie. And following a Supreme Court ruling last week, Tennessee did kind of, practically the same thing, but even worse. In their state, turning the formerly consolidated district that represented most of the core of Western Tennessee around Memphis into a series of long spider webs that stretch into the city and also out into all the redneck areas of western rural Tennessee. So if you thought gerrymandering was over and done with, if you thought maybe we were finally going to reach an era where district lines were going to be more or less no. It's fucked up, right? Because I don't like gerrymandering no matter who's doing it, and I feel like it's a bad practice for a lot of reasons that people way smarter than me have elucidated, but we can go into those too. But it's kind of like the only tactic you have, and if you're talking about state level Democratic parties, it's kind of like the only tactic they have to wrest power back away from Republicans. It's like, if one side of the political aisle is completely willing to gerrymander and the other side is completely unwilling to gerrymander in their favor, then what you eventually end up with is a one-party state. So it's kind of like a fucked up devil's bargain where the American people have voted in a whole cadre of politicians on both sides who are unwilling, well, not really on both sides. The Democrats have been willing to end gerrymandering a number of times. In fact, just last year, they tried to mount an attempt that was squashed by the Republicans, who are now complaining about all the blue states that are trying to gerrymander, or complaining about all the southern states that are controlled by Democrats that are trying their best to redraw fairer district maps. But it is in fact their unwillingness to ban gerrymandering that has led to this situation. We're on the cusp of being disenfranchised by fall. I mean, yeah, I am going to start telling people, I think I'm going to start taking a more action-forward approach when it comes to Democratic participation, because I kind of feel like this midterms shit. Ow. Ah. Fuck. Ah. God. Awful. Okay, hold on. Okay. Anyway, what I was saying before my own cough so rudely interrupted me was, what the hell is that? Oh, I think these midterms might be actually as important as many midterms before have been threatened to be, because it really does seem like the Republicans are pretty hell-bent on consolidating power and completely disenfranchising the Democrats, which has not really been at stake in previous election cycles or midterm cycles. People have made the claim, but in the past I've been able to examine the evidence and come away with the conclusion, I think people are exaggerating. This time, I really think there is a concerted effort on the part of the Republicans to disenfranchise American voters that don't go along with them in a real concerted way that was not true of previous cycles. Thank you for the $2, by the way. They said millions of Virginians had already voted before the amendment was introduced, meaning those voters never had a chance to consider lawmakers' positions on the proposal when casting ballots. Why should that matter, though? The lawmakers' positions are supposed to be a reflection of the people, not the other way around. The people are not supposed to be good little adjudicators of the lawmakers' will. The lawmakers are supposed to be reflections of the people's will. Notice that they're called public servants. Virginians had cast ballots on early voting. The amendment was pushed through after early voting had ended, making those votes null and void. Virginians had cast ballots on early voting. The amendment was pushed through after early voting had ended. Those no votes null and void. No, that's not the only way they could have interpreted that. That it was a choice to interpret things that way. They could have decided, okay, well, because people have already cast ballots according to these specific districts, then the results will be tabulated according to the previous rules, and then elections going forward will operate on these lines. I mean, at least that's how I would have tried to handle it if I were in the position of the Virginia Supreme Court. It seems like it would have worked perfectly well, would have, preserved the will of the voter and preserved the will of previous voters, basically. They both play the same game. Both sides are evil. The Democrats are trying to play the exact same game and change voting areas the same way. Right, but why are they doing that? Do you think they're doing that in a vacuum? Do you think that there's nothing behind that other than an avaricious desire to win more elections? Like, yes, that's part of it, but that's the motivator on both sides. We agree that both sides, when it comes to the electoral parties, when it comes to the Democrats versus the Republicans, we understand, I think, everybody here, that those two parties are on some level evil, on some level responsible for the destruction of our society, our environment, yada, yada, yada. But, like, true as that may be, is it not true that those parties are currently the instruments by which the people exercise their political will, insofar as that will can be exercised by a vote? They want the cash cow and power that comes from control. California has been doing this for the past 20 years. Democrats have a cash cow regardless of the fucking control they maintain. Democrats make more money when they're in off years. You realize that? You realize Democratic fundraising goes up when they're in opposition. The Democratic Party is in debt, massive debt. It may well be. What exactly does that have to do with the price rise in China? It's very interesting to me, right? This both sides rhetoric tends to only come up when someone wants to complain about what one side or the other is doing. You know? It's, I don't know if it's just a flaw of our mammalian brains or if it's something that is intrinsic to our culture or what, but there is a real tendency to cop the rhetoric of the independent whenever one is trying to decry the opposite party of the one with which they align more closely. You said they make a lot of money. They don't. They're broke. Kamala Harris raised $1 billion, the most money ever raised in a campaign. Both sides are morally bankrupt, that's the point. Yeah, but you're only worried about the moral bankruptcy of one side. You're like harshly advocating against one side when I'm a leftist that only votes for Democrats if they happen to align with my particular policy positions, which means I haven't voted for a Democrat in a very long time. And blew it all and lost? Yeah, but that doesn't matter. You said that they don't make any money and that they're broke. Either they're broke or they raised $1 billion and blew it all and didn't, like, both of these things cannot be true at the same time. Either they're broke and incapable of fundraising, or Kamala Harris raised more money than was ever raised in a single campaign in history and blew it all, which I would agree with. Obviously, she lost. Obama built camps. See, this is what I'm talking about. You are a Republican partisan that is utilizing the language of independents and centrists in order to lend credence to your arguments, but you're not actually a centrist or an independent. You don't actually believe that both sides are evil. You only care about the evils of one side. Are they broke or are they in debt? Because those are contradictions as well. No, someone said only Republicans built camps. My response is Obama did so as well. Okay, well, if I missed someone else's chat, I guess that's on me. No, I care how brainwashed you all are. Interesting. What exactly makes me brainwashed? What statement did I say that made you think I was brainwashed? Quote me exactly. Back the stream up if you have to, but don't put words in my mouth. I find it very interesting that you would assume that I'm a Democratic partisan for talking shit about the Republicans and the Republican Party, but I shouldn't assume that you're a Republican partisan because you're talking shit about the Democratic Party. I find this a very interesting lapse in logic on your part that you need to account for, or at the very least take credit for. I could use a cig in the dark too right now. This is actually a blunt, not a cigarette, but yeah. I care about both sides, just can't get over the whole thing about saying democracy died when that was never taken into account by Virginia trying to force a map through after many had already voted. Wardens, I'm being a little fucking hyperbolic, okay? To the extent that democracy is dead, it always has been. Democracy is a thing to be striven towards. It's a goal to be achieved. It's an aspiration to look up to. It's something we're trying out, we're getting to, we're working towards. And I just think that Virginia doing what it did was a step back. I just have a different interpretation of the facts than the justices who decided that opinion do. That's all. I just think that it would have been better for the for the ongoing project of democracy in the state of Virginia for the map that was voted in by the voters to have been preserved, and for any votes that were affected by that to follow previous rules. That's all. But it wasn't even if the map had gone through a proper process, it probably would have died anyways. I mean, it was voted in by the voters. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. I feel like maybe we have like a fundamental difference on the facts here. I mean, I can look it up. I really don't want to, though, because I'd have to disconnect my phone from the charger. Like, from what I understand, the fucking map that was rejected by the Virginia Supreme Court was voted in by Virginia voters. And ultimately, I don't really care that the lawmakers didn't get to have a say on it. I'm sorry, I just don't. The people got to have a say on it. And if there's people in the state of Virginia that didn't like the outcome of that, well, maybe you should have got out and voted. We aren't a democracy. Electoralism is a Romanesque republic. Virginia is full of bureaucratic, bootlicking Dems and Republicans just looking at Tim Kaine's caving in and funding ICE. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's why I got so bristly with that person that I notice hasn't said anything, or at least I'm pretty sure they haven't said anything since I gave them that talking down to. I'm not seeing anything from them. Let's see here. Yep. Hasn't said a goddamn thing since I gave them that talking down to. So I guess they must have taken the point. I asked them, what did I say that indicated to them that I was brainwashed? They couldn't answer because, of course, the answer is that I'm not brainwashed and that I don't really seem all that brainwashed. I know that the Democrats, for the most part, are shills. I'm just willing to acknowledge that there could conceivably be Democratic politicians that I would vote for. For this, I am castigated. Are you RVA? What? I don't even know what that means. Tennessee completely eliminated an entirely black district to give the Republicans more seats. So piss off with both sides bullshit. Well, yeah, that's another thing. When the Democrats draw up creative districts, it's usually not to, like, disempower specific fucking racial or ethnic or religious minorities, you know? Like, they might try to draw maps that are favorable to them, but at the very least, they draw maps that give some consideration to, like, diversity and actual, like, representation of the people that live in the communities to be represented, and, like, geographic sense and shit. You know, it's like the old Memphis district made sense. It's like a city. It should be its own district. Instead, now it's being divvied up into 3 distinct districts, which all have, like, big, giant, fat arms that extend out into the more central portion of the state where things are a lot more rural, and people almost universally vote Republican. And that's an incredible act of partisanship that can only be justified on partisan grounds, that can only be justified on the basis of white supremacy and fucking crazy ass Republican nationalism and shit. And that is just, I don't know, man, like, the Dems gerrymander, but, like, I feel like there are way better examples of corruption that you could give when it comes to Democrats than their gerrymandering tendencies, because I honestly think that comes down to the fact that the Republicans don't want to ban it. Because the Dems have put up votes to that a number of times in the House and Senate. It has been put to a vote, and it's always the Republicans who turn it down. So, you know, Republicans always want to fucking bitch and moan about the redistricting shit, and my response is always going to be, well, you want the Dems to stop redistricting? Well, we want you guys to stop redistricting. We'll stop when you stop. I say we. Once again, I don't have any real allegiance to the Democratic Party. I'm just saying. No, it's to disempower conservatives. Illinois has about 40% of voters that go Republican, but Dems control 2/3 of the state assembly. Well, that's good, though. That is how it should be. The wardens, think about that. That's pretty democratic. So Republicans make up 40% of the voting base, and they make up roughly 33% of the state assembly. That's pretty representative, actually. Compare that to a state like Mississippi, where Democrats make up around 2/5 of the state. But when it comes to, like, the state legislature and the state, like, the Congress and all that shit, we're fucking so far red that you can't even fucking see blue. You know? So it's like, we make up, like, 2/5 of the fucking population, but we make up, like, 1/10 of the seats in our Congress. Compare that to 33% versus 40%, and the odds start to sound like it's pretty fucking actually democratic in Illinois. That map in 2024 was pretty red. I don't know if you're talking about the individual state map or if you're talking about the entire electoral map for all of 2024, but, like, the map is, like, determined on the basis of who wins that state. And who wins that state? Whoever gets the majority of votes in it. You know? Like, it's a pretty simple majority, too. Like, for example, in Mississippi, I believe 38% of voters voted for Kamala Harris. But if you look at our state on the 2024 map, it's going to be red. That 38% of voters, you know, amounts to a hill of beans when it comes to how the map's colored. Except, brother, I'm not your brother. Mississippi is a 75-25 split in Congress and is a 70-30 voting split. Where are you getting those numbers from, Warden? I believe the 75-25 split in Congress maybe, but 70-30 voting split? I mean, I guess I'll fucking look up the numbers real quick if my phone's got the thing going. Let's see. Yeah, it's got enough charge. I can do it real quick. Let's just see. What percentage of Mississippians voted for Kamala Harris in 2024? 38%.
Kamala Harris received 38% of the vote in Mississippi in the 2024 election, with a total of 466,668 votes. Donald Trump won the state with 60.9% of the vote.
Oof! Oh! So not even 62% of the vote, only 60% of the vote, which means like 2% either didn't vote at all or voted for somebody else. I'm guessing it's not counting people who didn't vote. I'm guessing that 2% is people who voted for some write-in candidate or an independent candidate. It's actually kind of shocking to me that 2% of Mississippians are voting for independent candidates. That's kind of cool. But, yeah, so based on those statistics, 38%, if we take participation in the national level presidential election to be generally reflective of the voters' general tendencies, I feel like if you're going to round with a number like 38, you got to round up. It's more like a 60-40 split. Kamala got crushed in Mississippi. I'm not a Kamala defender, and I'm not trying to act like she fucking made some big victory down here, but 38% is a damn far side higher than what you would assume based on the rhetoric that comes out of people, especially people in the Republican Party, about Mississippi. If you would believe Republicans and even some uneducated Democrats about what the Deep South is, you might genuinely believe that only like 10% of people voted for Kamala. But the reality of it is, like 2/5 of people voted for Kamala, which is a pretty fucking sizable chunk of people. 38% versus 60%, I mean, that's, you know, like the Dems need only gain 10% of the voter base from the Republicans, and then they're pretty much neck and neck. And the only reason we're talking about all this, by the way, is because people have deep misapprehensions about the political realities of people that live in the South and how people feel down here. And people feel entitled to walk all over us when it comes to talking about our elections and our political tendencies. But if you look at the facts, if you look at the way that people actually vote, and even if you look at some of the policies passed, it shows a state that's a lot more ripe for progressive movements than people realize. Most of the country is not progressive. Most of the country is not political at all. Political obsessives are a small percentage of the population. People that are just kind of participatory in some fashion or another make up a pretty great share among themselves and among Americans broadly. And some of them play at being more politically serious at times. But I wouldn't say that most of the country is like meaningfully progressive. but I also wouldn't say that most of the country is meaningfully conservative. I think that most people in this country just want to, you know, go to work, get paid well for what they do, have enough to feed their families, have some hobbies. They want to have some friends or maybe something to fill their time when they're not on the grind. A lot of them want to have a family. A lot of them already do have families and want to make sure that stays going good. And for a lot of those people, they only become political when something starts to impinge on that otherwise pretty normal life. I mean, really, people that are deep in politics and news and are following the news cycles and all that, we get caught up in this idea that we're surrounded by revolutionaries. But the fact of it is, most people are not really that tuned into it. Now, growing numbers of people are, more and more people are getting interested, as the sheer amount of demonstrations over the last 5 years shows. But I think it's something that kind of comes and goes. As a Texan, I can relate. Talking to other lefties outside the South feels like a lost cause sometimes, especially when talking about the South. Oh yeah, it feels like you're just talking to, like, honestly, they talk about the South with the language of the bigot. And they talk about the South as if there's something inherent to our soil that makes us apt to misbehave. They talk about us as if there's not millions upon millions of people down here yearning for liberation and freedom, yearning for the ability to actually make a better life for themselves. They talk about the South as if there is a permanent, intangible evil that cannot be purged and from which we cannot be delivered. And I just don't fucking buy that. I live down here, and I've lived, unfortunately at times, quite close to the South for my entire life, you know, and I spent a lot of the last, 4 years traveling around the country and shit. But outside of that, I'm 27. For most of the 24 years preceding that, I lived either in like southern Missouri, very close to the like northern edge of the South, and in Mississippi, which is the heart of the Deep South. I'm familiar with the people down here. I feel like there's a lot of aspersions cast about the populations of these areas. Not just about how conservative we are, but like how conservative the conservatives are. Like at this point, I would say that hate groups and shit like that have less traction in the South than they've ever had. But yet, anytime somebody wants to talk about hate groups, they're going to associate them with like the Deep South and shit, even though, from what I can tell, based on my own fucking experiences, it seems like there's actually like a greater preponderance of hate groups, at least demonstrating openly. I don't know if that means there's more of them organizing there or not, in places like the Northeast and the West Coast. Now, maybe that's literally just like in response to the sheer amount of leftist advocacy that's in those places. Maybe that's the most reasonable explanation. But I think it speaks to something about the misapprehensions that people have about the different areas of the United States. I mean, the South has been red the entirety of my life. I wrote it off because it's been a lost cause my entire life. Yeah, but that's the thing. people write it off as a lost cause because of how the voter maps turn out, because of how the elections turn out. And I don't really think people realize how much help progressives in the Deep South need in order to be able to be effective. People down here are building with garbage. There are lots and lots of progressive people down here. Like I said, 38% of people in this state voted for Kamala Harris, and there were lots of people who were eligible to vote who didn't vote at all. I imagine quite a few of those are probably progressives who might have voted for a compelling enough Dem, or for a compelling enough progressive of some unaffiliated party or something like that. The problem is, there's a I don't know how to put it, like, the disenfranchisement is a word that gets thrown around a lot, right? And oftentimes it's thrown around in terms of fear. Like, we need to stop this. Like, we're talking, you know, we talked about it a lot earlier this year about, like, the SAVE Act and stuff, you know, about the possibilities of disenfranchisement that it brought up. And it is something that you should worry about, but I feel like it's often either forgotten or just not ever mentioned or thought about, that disenfranchisement is a very real and palpable phenomenon in the Deep South. There are entire political machines that exist basically to make people feel like their vote is useless. And there is a concerted cultural tendency among the politically involved conservative class in the Deep South to be evangelical, not just about their religion, but their politics, which has kind of a chilling effect on progressive politics too. But honestly, the biggest thing that fucks more people over than anything is the amount of consolidated power that the descendants of slave-owning plantation owners and the profiteers of that system still have in this system and in this big region we call the Deep South. In almost every southern state, in probably every southern state, there are families of tremendous prominence who can trace their wealth squarely and evenly back to the days of the slave trade and the use of slavery as an economic engine. And in a lot of areas in the Deep South, these families still retain control over the political machines and over all of the, like, businesses, housing, shit like that in these areas very often too. So, for example, if you are a Democrat or a progressive or something like that that lives in a house that is rented to you by a conservative landlord, and you put a like a flag or whatever, not a flag, but like a sign, put like a yard sign out, you might get some kind of retribution from your landlord. They might just take the sign and tell you can't put it back up. And then if you do put it back up, they try and have you evicted, or they try to fuck with you, or whatever. If you are, like, too politically loud as a lefty, a labor agitator, or whatever, and you work for one of the corporations that they have a franchise in, or one of the businesses that they own or have an interest in, they can pull strings to get you fired, sometimes even blacklisted. And this disenfranchisement is the primary vehicle by which any meaningful progressive action is completely stymied and stopped in Mississippi. Oh, it's a fire. I thought you were in a blackout. No. No. This close to the ice storm? No, I'd be freaking out. If we were already going through another fucking blackout already. Dude, I'm high as fuck. That's wild. Dynasties still have a hold on many sectors of society. Yeah, it's not even something we talk about anymore, but yeah, it's a real phenomenon. Look into it sometime. The Southern Poverty Law Center has articles about it. There's lots of videos about it. I'm pretty sure there's a video from More Perfect Union talking about this phenomenon. How, like in a lot of areas of the Deep South, the descendants of plantation owners are still the wealthy families that own and control everything. But that's not the only way that dynasties still persist. If you trace a ton, and I mean a ton, of modern billionaires and super rich people, if you look at their Wikipedia article or whatever, very often you'll find that their parents have Wikipedia articles of their own, and that their parents have Wikipedia articles, and then you can find in a lot of cases that these people have, they've been in power for years, decades, centuries. Some of them fucking hundreds of years, it's insane how long power has managed to descend through the ages. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? The fact that we have not managed to throw off the chains of the bourgeoisie yet means that there are going to be some living families who are descendants of a very long line of wealth. And it's just because, right, there were bound to be people as the economic situation changed, as the way the economy worked evolved through the years. Some people were bound to make the correct decision and figure out ways to pass their wealth on down to their family. That just makes good common sense. Old money, exactly. Old money. But when people think old money, they think of they think of the right things, but they don't realize what the implications of that are, I feel like. Because people will throw it around kind of casually, and it's actually a really useful description of a relevant class dynamic in modern day America. Let's see here. Yeah, someone shadow banned my main. That's crazy. What? Huh? This feels like watching a DayZ stream. Well, I can't help. I needed to have a fire. My brain needed the respite. I needed a good opportunity to sit around and smoke a blunt and talk shit. But, all of the wood is wet because it rained for several days. And the wood wicked up a lot of that moisture naturally, so. Una mattina, troviamo. Oh, bella ciao, una mattina. Look out for skinwalkers and close encounters owls. Ooh. Ooh. I will keep a lookout. Thank you for the $20. I appreciate that. You know what, Nambot? I love that when you donate, you usually do it at a time when there's not a lot of people in here. Sometimes you'll donate when there's a ton of people in here. But it's good to know that even when I'm not pulling a huge audience, there's still people out there that like to listen and hang out and occasionally dono. That's awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. Ooh, smoke getting in my eye. Just when you were blowing on the fire? What now? This morning I got up. Yeah. Did you do anything else? Is that a stream or is that Billy just posting some shit? What the fuck? Oh. Oh, okay. He ain't live no more. I love waking up to pee at night and seeing you streaming. I'll admit I usually miss some sleep for it, but that's okay. I just drive large vehicles full of people. Yeah, I mean, what really is the danger? It's overstated. Ow, 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 if anything. Ow, ow! Fire, why are you hurting me? Meanie? My fire is mean to me, guys. Get onto it. Ow. Ow, quit hurting me. Fuck you. Ow. How did our monkey ancestors master this bullshit? Got any multivitamins? What? The manatee, what are you going on about? What? Got any multivitamins? Got any multivitamins? You know, I need them because I don't get out there and see sunlight ever. I'm never outside in the sun where the light can get me, and I don't have a very varied diet, so I have to take a multivitamin. Another DayZ thing. Oh, okay. Well, I just made it into a manatee bit, so... Thank you for the $20, by the way. I appreciate it a ton. Popcorn lung maxing? Motherfucker, you don't know the first fucking thing about popcorn lung. I wish everyone identified my name and pick immediately wherever I comment. Well, you know, all the energy that Paul lost for the manatee, I think I absorbed every bit of it. I don't know. There are Brett Keane A-logs out there, and Ben, I think, is the most notable of them that's still going. And I guess the DFF boys still do it on occasion. But, you know, I feel like I'm in a position to be a pretty decent fucking, you know. I feel like I'm in the position to be a pretty good, what's the word I'm looking for? Independent, I guess you'd say, from the original 4 greatest. Brett Keane A-log. Inhale anything into your lungs is bad for you, especially smoke, which weakens air sacs into your lungs, reducing the lung capacity. So you're saying, like, when I just inhaled air into my lungs, that was bad? Damn, breathing is bad for you. Damn, bro, you're blowing my mind. Listen, you are not the first person to tell me about the dangers of smoking. Nor do I imagine you will be the last. However, to you, I must give the same refrain to which I have given every other mongrel idiot that has scrolled past my live stream and offered me simple-minded admonitions against my smoking habit. I don't give a shit. I am literate enough to read the Surgeon General's warning on every bag of tobacco you purchase in the United States, and as a result I'm aware of the profound dangers posed by nicotine smoke. You do not need to inform me, nor is your advice and opinion appreciated, in particular in this instance. I gotta keep listening to more Hitchens books on audio tape. I think they are helping my speaking ability. Which makes sense. The man was a gifted wordsmith. And completely fucking wrong about Iran. Dude, that is the most bothersome thing to me about God is Not Great. And it hangs on my mind every time I get to this portion of the book. There's like a 10-minute long admonition against the Iranian Revolution and the Iranian regime, which is fine. I feel like it would be fine if it was all centered on religious critique. But like embedded in it is the repetition of what I think has been demonstrated at this point to be a fucking lie, which is this idea that Iran is just around the corner from getting nukes and has a genuine intention to build them, which I think the negotiations under Obama proved to be false. And I feel like even their own speeches and internal communications pretty much show that to be true. Maybe they want to build nukes now, I don't know. They've got a much more extremist Ayatollah in place. Who the fuck knows? I don't know. But I feel like at the time when Hitchens was writing, there was not a whole lot of evidence to that effect. And in fact, there might have been pretty compelling evidence against it. And it seems like a pretty stunning lapse of judgment for a guy who was like such a well-rounded and well-educated and open-minded individual. So I don't know. I feel like I'm maybe after I get done re-listening to it this time I'm going through right now, maybe I'll start looking for some Hitchens speeches and debates and interviews specifically about the topic of Iran, and maybe he will mention some of his sources or some of the thing. Like maybe there will be a paper trail I can follow. Maybe he'll even convince me. Yeah, Trump made the situation way more violacious. Yeah, I know. You know, Brett Keene's sitting around like, this wasn't one of the ways you were supposed to emulate Hitler, you idiot. Not saying Biden ignored Iran, but sending letters to Ayatollah ain't gonna do jack. It actually kind of did, though. Like, that's the thing, is negotiations fucking worked, man. We had a deal with Iran. We had a fucking negotiated we had a negotiated treaty with Iran that Trump ripped up in his first term, all because it was all spearheaded by Obama. It was arguably the best thing that came out of the Obama administration, right up there with getting rid of pre-existing conditions being an exclusionary factor for insurance and shit like that. Fuck, it was one of the few objectively good things that came out of that damn administration. And it really does seem like it was just Trump's fucking ego that got it undid. I don't know. MAGA, you tell me. Was it Israel or was it Trump? Decide now which one of your sacred cows you shall offer upon my altar. Israel or Trump? Oh my god. Bro, sending. When I say Israel, that is not a stand-in for all fucking Jews across the planet. Jewish people, by and large, are just average fucking people. And their opinions on Zionism range from vague support to utter condemnation. And yeah, I guess there are some international Jews that that don't live in Israel and yet support the Israeli cause. But they're an increasingly small number because most Jewish people that support the Israeli cause move to fucking Israel. They've got a right of return and all that shit. So there's no reason for them not to. And you can distinguish very easily, very, very simply and easily, between the state of Israel, which is a state that masquerades as secular while being also openly theocratic, and claims to represent the interests of all Jewish people worldwide, while actually committing horrible atrocities that, by that association, poison the name of Jewish people worldwide. And I feel like it's very easy to distinguish between the average Jewish person living in America, Britain, anywhere else, even maybe in Israel, because there are Jewish people in Israel that are against what Israel's engaging in with the Palestinians and with their neighbors. And you can separate those people from the tendencies of the Israeli state, which is, by the way, only Jewish in nature, because that just happens to be what was convenient for the political machinations of the time. If Romani people had been the sole and exclusive fucking target of the Holocaust, and if Romani people had been the only and primary group blamed for the troubles of Europe or whatever, then I think it every bit as probable that they would have decided to repatriate some area of Persia for the Romanis instead of Palestine for the Jewish people. It was an act of convenience, in my opinion, not of genuine interest in preserving the land of Israel for the Jewish people or anything like that. I think the auspices of religious fundamentalism and the bringing about of the rapture and all that shit were just very happy coincidences that happened to align very, very, very well. In fact, so well that they couldn't pass up the opportunity with Western billionaires. I love how non-Jewish people have these chats. 100% Democrat, atheists and believers. He is super intelligent. Who? What? What's going on? I don't know. I just don't like it when people cast aspersions at Jewish people broadly for the actions of the Israeli state. I'm not a Jew. As far as I know, I've got no Jewish ancestry. Enviably, sometimes. Because it does seem like there's something about being Jewish that makes you just a little bit more talented than other people. And, you know, if that is indeed an ethnic gift, it is something for which I cannot deny you guys. But, I don't like it when people make aspersions about ethnic or religious groups based merely on the association in and of itself. It rings with the language of the bigot, which I reject unilaterally. I don't like it when people refer to an entire group of people the same way an ancient caveman might refer to a competing tribe. A lot of them are Jewish because they are raised to be scholars. Well, I mean, like, unironically, there is actually a couple of reasons why Jewish people happen to be a little bit more common in certain areas. When it comes to finances, it's literally something the fucking Catholic Church imposed on Jewish people. I'm not kidding. It's something Christendom imposed on them. It's because of the weird, it was a weird religious workaround, right? So Western Europe and Eastern Europe at the time, like all of it, you know, it's either Orthodox or it's Catholic, and either way, until obviously the Protestant Reformation and all that shit, but you get what I'm saying, right? There was a problem though. Jewish people are not allowed to do usury to other Jewish people, and Catholics are not allowed to do usury to other Catholics. But Jewish people are allowed to, they are allowed to charge interest on a loan to Catholics. And you might be thinking, well, why on earth would you ever want to subject yourself to interest and all that shit? Well, it's because it's actually kind of really, really, really difficult to convince people or to justify a loan if there is not some kind of benefit on the other end when it comes to, like, you know, capital-based economies. And this religious workaround was found where Jewish people were allowed to do this job that was so important for the like economies of Christendom to function, and as a result it kind of became like a family trade for Jewish families that were involved in it, which is not to say all Jewish families in Europe, obviously not. Tons and tons of people that were Jewish in Europe were working other jobs that they were allowed to do. They weren't allowed to do a whole lot of jobs in Christendom, mind you, but it was a thing that was imposed upon Jewish people, is the main takeaway. And as far as, like, their modern, like, the fact that they're, like, kind of overrepresented in, like, media and academia and, like, governance and business is mainly because, like you said, and I'm finally reaching around to it again, Jewish families, much to their credit, raise their kids, kind of like Asian families do in a lot of cases, to be incredibly studious and aspirational, and to be, like, what's the word I'm looking for? They raise them with a really good work ethic, basically, and with like an ethic towards learning and improving oneself, which leads naturally to people going into those careers. Which, it's kind of sad, right? Like, in a lot of, like, regular American families with no particular cultural heritage, there is kind of like a vague sense, like, you're raising your kid, you know, to give them as many opportunities as possible. And a lot of times in doing so, the ethic is not as firmly drilled in, and the studiousness that is expected of some other culture's children is not present or enforced or whatever. And as a result, I mean, it produces plenty of perfectly functional people, but it also produces plenty of people that just kind of end up working at Walmart and hating their life because they don't really know what else to do. And it's not really their fault. And I don't even really know if it's their parents' fault. I mean, it obviously is on both cases to some degree. But to what degree? I don't know when you consider, like, the influence that society has over those lives. Anyone conflating Jews with Zionists is doing the bidding of Zionists? Yep, 100%. Literally, if you equate Jewish people and Zionists, you are doing the work of the Zionists. You are making their argument for them, basically. Okay, so I'll tell you what, Sending. So you believe in the concept of collective guilt, right? I'm waiting, Sending. I'm waiting on your reply. I'm waiting patiently. I have a distinct feeling my question is not going to be answered. We need all this offensive drone tech, or the people we came here to genocide will take their land back. Listen, we all know Israel's a piece of shit, okay? I will never forget that one Zionist lady talking about Holocaust education and how it needs to be revised because we don't want kids getting the wrong idea when they see Palestinians and it conjures up images of starved out kids in Nazi concentration camps. Is the military that's a piece of shit? Well, I would hope that everyone here is intelligent enough to know that when I say Israel, I mean the state apparatus that is represented, right? Looks like RFK is looking into banning SSRIs like Zoloft, Prozac, and Lexapro, to name a few. What? Really? No way. Oh, dude. No fucking way. Oh, no. I don't take any of those, but that's a bad fucking sign, dude. Ugh, please, no. Man, I swear to God, they're trying to kill us. I'm telling you guys right now. They're trying to kill us, guys. They are actually trying to kill us. the upper class, the bourgeoisie, however you want to phrase it, is actually and unironically trying to fucking kill us. What other fucking conclusion could I possibly draw from this turn of events? It's not that those medications are life-saving and that they keep people alive, like, in terms of, like, if they don't have them, their body is just going to instantly die. But they do keep people alive, and that they keep suicidal people from feeling that urge and from dealing with that ideation. Some of them prevent anxious people from having panic attacks as often as they would. It's like people need these medicines in a lot of cases just to stay somewhat fucking sane. What is the fucking plan? To medicate everybody with pot? I'm sorry, that's not gonna work. I'm a stoner and I'll fucking admit right now that ain't gonna work. What is the fucking plan? I'm telling you, man, they're trying to kill us off. Because just take a look at fucking r/public freakout if you want a fucking reminder of how crazy people already are. Now imagine how imagine how fucking nutty people are gonna be when you force them to be stepped off of their drugs. Idiot, dude. What a fucking retard. People will go to harder drugs to medicate, probably end up homeless too. Yeah, like someone said in the chat, like some of these drugs ruin people because they're overprescribed. It's like, yeah, I acknowledge that some of them are overprescribed. That doesn't mean you fucking throw the baby out with the bathwater. The answer is never a ban. The answer for these kinds of questions is never a ban. Once again, the answer for this kind of question is never a ban. I don't know when people got that in their fucking heads, but it's not a good idea. It doesn't work. It's a bad fucking idea. Don't do it. It's stupid. Might as well ban the air. Ban the rain. He said he was looking into the potential to ban it, meaning it may be illegal to do so. Okay is almost as bad as ban. No, it isn't. That's not what the fucking... That's not what the science seems to show. They will try to ban the air and the rain if it serves them, and right now the Supreme Court might side with them. Yeah, that's the thing that fucking bothers me, is that, like, in this administration, in this climate, they might well be able to get away with it. I think it's actually kind of humorous and cute that RFK is even trying to go through all the hurdles and justifications and all that of... Yeah, like, it's almost kind of amusing to me that he even bothers. Like, why even bother at this point, RFK? Why even bother? The idea that there's things this administration can't get away with is kind of funny to me, because so far, there's been... like so many things that us lefties have said they can't get away with this, and then they got away with it. So it's just like, at what point do we fucking shit or get off the pot, you know? I'm ready to shit. I don't know about you guys. It's wild that RFK Jr. has time to do anything other than molest roadkill. Well, he's taking time out of his busy schedule of finding dead dogs on the side of the road to fuck, and finding time to ban people's prescription psychotic medications. A necessary good for the American people, I'm sure. But don't you worry, I'm sure he's got the rotting corpse of a small chihuahua keeping him company at the desk. Or perhaps he's got a donkey's head. Are we sure that RFK Jr. doesn't own slaves? That weirdo is that I'm telling you, he's a fucking weirdo. And I tell you now, the only motherfuckers I have ever seen, like looking back through my studies of history, that were nearly as weird and fucked up in their proximity to power and their personality combined, were slaveholders. Like plantation owners and fucking people like that, and slave owners and shit, they were fucking some of the craziest, most insane and depraved motherfuckers ever. Look into Madame Delphine Lalaurie if you want an example of that. Or that might be just the name of the character from the AHS miniseries, but it's based on a real person that was that actually lived, who was like incredibly fucking just like ridiculously depraved to her slaves. And she was one of a million slave owners that were like that in the Deep South. Oh, they invented shit to torture slaves. Yeah, literally. They would invent new shit all the time to torture slaves with. It was one of the favorite pastimes of the Deep South. Not the entire South, of course. Most of the South couldn't afford to own slaves, but the plantations, they certainly did. And the foremen and people who were hired to watch the slaves and to, therefore, earn themselves a sense of superiority over the human beings that they were supervising. Such travesties were common. Not only common, excused, justified, argued for. Far from being condemned, many of the perpetrators of these acts were lauded for years. That's what cracker means if you didn't know. Whip cracker, yeah. Yes, it refers to the overseers. And another thing you don't often hear or learn about American slavery, but a thing that was just as true nonetheless, a lot of the reason why overseers was hired, a lot of the reason why they were hired in the numbers that they were, was less about actually like maintaining control over the slaves, human beings being, after all, pretty, unfortunately, pretty easy to manipulate and to control with softer methods rather than harder ones. Honestly, it wouldn't have been that difficult to keep people who had been so thoroughly stripped of their identity and their autonomy and their freedom to begin with in that state of servitude and everything it would have been that difficult to maintain that even without overseers. The reason why they were hired in such great numbers, especially towards the end of slavery, was actually specifically to reinforce white supremacy and white supremacist narratives about the world. The idea was if you have white people and black people working alongside each other in the fields, that is going to create a sense of common interest between the poor whites and the enslaved black people that are working together in these fields. But if you have a system that allows some of those white people to become overseers who ultimately don't do really much work, if any at all, and then some of the white people are still working in the fields, but they've got a superiority over the other workers and more privilege that's enforced by the system of overseers, then you create a system of solidarity with the white people and each other and the plantation owners, instead of allowing such to form with the people that were actually doing the work along class lines, as it perhaps would have been otherwise. So it was less about actually meaningfully maintaining control, which, let's face it, like I said, human beings are unfortunately pretty easy to control, regardless of their skin color or initial disposition. We're just kind of an easily manipulated fucking species, and more about maintaining white supremacy. The mere 2 to 3% of files we do have seems incriminating evidence for many people our DOJ have failed to prosecute. Yep. And that's one of the reasons why I think so many people are disillusioned with the government right now, why so many people are pissed off and anxious and irritated and angry more than anything, is because we know, a lot of us know, tons of us know, and we can't get it out of our heads. There are people that are like kid diddlers and massive fraudsters and tax evaders, tax thieves, etc., that are incriminated heavily by files anyone can access, but that are not being prosecuted. And a lot of us, even, smaller group within that larger group, but a pretty large group themselves, know that part of the reason why that ain't being done is because of how many fucking things it would fuck up. How many paradigms would collapse if you were to actually prosecute all the people involved. It's like a giant network of evil that has found a niche for itself that is self-perpetuating and self-protecting by virtue of its proximity to power and connection. Running the country literally. So, that's the devil's bargain that's being presented to us as Americans, right? Sure. You can prosecute the Epstein class. You really want to. But are you really sure you want to do that? And the American voter goes, well, yeah, of course. Duh. Of course I want to fucking prosecute the Epstein class. These motherfuckers make their whole living stealing off of me and people like me, people in my same class position, exploiting us, and they're gonna fucking turn around and abuse the weakest and poorest and most vulnerable of us in such a disgusting and myopic way? Hell yeah, we want to prosecute them. And the cynic says, okay, well, that's all very nice and utopian of you, but these are not just petty criminals we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about Donald Trump, Noam Chomsky, Ghislaine Maxwell, Hunter Biden. We're talking about Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. We're talking about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. We're talking about Bill Gates and Melinda Gates. And then the American voter sits there and contemplates for a second, runs through their options, and they get to thinking. And while they're busy thinking, the lawmaker, of course, being astute, gets up, closes their little portfolio with all their paperwork in it, zips it up, puts it back into their ascot, and out they go, out of the door, leaving the American voter there to ponder and wonder about what might have been if they had managed to think it over just a little quicker. Screen is dark, yeah, I know. I have a fire going, and the light that it's putting off is not particularly good. Let's see, can I do relight? Lighting on? Well, that's fucking horrible. No, that's not what I want to do. Retouch on, no. Really? That's all I can do? Damn. A fire? Do you not have electricity? No, I've got electricity. I've also just got a rare American privilege that used to be more common, called a backyard. I understand if it's something to which you're not familiar. And I'm not even trying to be condescending or an asshole. I'm just being real. Unfortunately, this is something a lot of people can't do. Because, like, a lot of people these days, even if they do rent a house, a lot of them can't afford to, like, buy a portable fire pit or something like that. Even if you can, no guarantee that your rental contract lets you have a little backyard fire. Even if you can do that, there's no guarantee that you can sit up at 3 in the morning jibba-jabbing at your phone. So this is really the unique privilege of someone who is lucky enough to live on land that is bigger than a thumbtack. I do not have a backyard. I am one of them. That makes me sad, genuinely. I know some people can have a backyard because some people are going to have to live in cities, and that's fine. I get that. But genuinely, one thing I would love to see is, and maybe I should work on this idea and workshop it a little and make it something good that I can talk about in shorthand. But I would love to see community gardens that are designed to be more than just places where things grow, but that are also designed to allow people to have a place to come hang out. Not in huge numbers necessarily, but let people come, you know, hang out and, like, have an environment where some people can have a fire. You know, like, they live in an apartment, they don't get the opportunity to do it often, so you fucking, you know, you create some kind of mechanism by which they can do that. And then in the daytime, maybe there's some, like, park facilities there too. Some, like, picnic tables and stuff. Maybe a little basketball court or something. Which I guess at this point we're just talking about a park with a community garden attached. But wouldn't that in itself be a really cool idea? I want this country to be better. I feel like I get so caught up in my dreams and fantasies because I really have so many ideas for ways that we could make this country better. And a lot of times when I talk about them, I just, you know, get dismissed as a lunatic because whatever. Nobody's interested in my crazy socialist vision of America. But there's some of these ideas I think would actually be pretty compatible with the way we already do things. It's like, think about how many parks exist. And then think about how many of them have a pretty decent little chunk of land somewhere on them where you could plant some vegetables and have them do good. Now imagine every little community park in the fucking country has a little community garden somewhere on it. And I feel like this goes pretty firmly in line with the food not lawns thing too. I live in New York City. I am blessed to have a very large backyard, plus for my kids, and the public parks are too dangerous. What? Phoebe, what does this mean? U.S. Justice Department can use military lawyer to prosecute civilian judge rules. So basically, the U.S. Justice Department has a more limited army of lawyers than the U.S. military does. This may sound counterintuitive, but it is, to my knowledge, the way things work up until this day. And as a result, there is probably a pretty concerted effort and interest on the part of the administration and officials within the DOJ to use these military lawyers and perhaps even military legal mechanisms, I don't know, to prosecute civilians in order to more efficiently and effectively prosecute American citizens, likely for, free speech related shit. It's not that we don't know how to make it better, it's that it's purposefully kept shitty for us. Yeah, I know. To some degree, I know that. And I try and fight against it to the best of my ability. It just sucks that we have to do so much fighting when it seems like their task is so easy, you know? It's so easy for them to sell the average worker on stupid bullshit. Lawns are bullshit anyways. It's the equivalent to poor people buying fake jewelry, so how does that work out? Lawns are high-class LARPing. Laying in grass is nice, though. Yeah. So, lawns, as we understand them, are definitely high-class LARPing, and yes, Bermuda grass is an invasive species and should be treated as such. I agree. Totally agree. I get it, and yes. But, Matt brings up a good point when he says that laying in the soft grass is very nice. And to this eternal question, this unending dialectic, I propose an answer that I think everybody can get behind. Clover. Number one, the whole idea of a lawn should go away. We should be growing food and flowers on our lawns, not stupid fucking grass that does very little to harbor life and in fact is kind of like hostile to it, and that we actually treat in a way that is energy inefficient and does nothing other than present a visage that our culture has decided is beautiful. There is no reason for them other than that. There are justifications that people have come up with in the interim, but all of them, and I do mean all of them, can be answered with other solutions. So, for example, people will say, well, I have to have a lawn because I have to have somewhere for my kid to play with his outside toys, and I've got to have somewhere where he can run around and where we can see a snake if it's in the, like we can see a snake if it's snaking around in the grass and it's maintained grass and all that. The problem is you can also avoid very much any chance of your kid encountering a snake by just cutting whatever you do have instead of grass, and like doing it in a way that is scheduled with the vibes of nature. Not only that, but if you are good about the weeds on your property, and you are prudent about keeping your house clean and stuff like that, and about keeping the trash, hopefully somewhere far away from the, like basically the main reason snakes encroach on human uh, areas is to catch rodents that are attracted to our habitations. So if you can reduce the amount of rodents that are attracted to your habitation, you can massively reduce the amount of snakes that might be found in the grass. And I know it sounds like a silly objection, but people will really bring this shit up. Another objection people will bring up is, um, well, I've got to have a lawn, because if I didn't have a lawn, then a whole bunch of weeds would take over, and it would just look ugly, and it would attract a bunch of bugs and snakes and pests and rodents and shit like that. And that would be true if you did nothing but take your existing, shitty, fucked up Bermuda grass lawn and left it to its own devices. Then yes, after a few years, it would eventually start to get invaded by seeds blown on the wind from adjacent properties and around town, by things sending up runners and stuff into your yard, and eventually you would have a jungle. But a Bermuda grass lawn, or even a lawn indeed, is not the only way to keep the space in front of and behind your house. One way that is not often considered or thought about, but is often allowed within a lot of HOA rules, and is also just really pretty no matter what kind of neighborhood you live in, is raised beds. So maybe you don't like the idea of having to bend over and having to deal with a whole bunch of like heavy equipment multiple times a year in order to prepare a traditional garden bed and do rows. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe that sounds like a lot of work to you. And it is. And so is building the raised beds. But once you get them built, once you get them ready, they are super easy to maintain compared to a traditional garden, because you can do most of it by hand, and you can do most of it pretty quickly by hand too. And you can control the inputs to your plants a lot better, because like they're closer to you, they're spared from a lot of the problems with just taking existing soil and plowing it under and planting stuff in there and all, like yada yada. They're higher, and therefore easier to get to, and therefore easier to weed and keep somewhat maintained and looking nice without the use of any mowers or chemicals or anything like that. And as far as the walkways in between those beds, or the little row garden you plant in your yards instead, you can have stuff like clover. And a lot of people that do have lawns that don't really want to transition to growing food and flowers in their lawn, but don't want to have Bermuda grass and shitty invasives like that, should look into getting a clover that is native to their area, and like just sow the absolute fuck out of your yard, and keep doing it every year, and eventually the clover will be established and it will take over everything else. And a clover lawn is perfect. It is great. It's amazing. It's a lot softer and cooler to lay in clover than it is to lay in a lot of regular grass. Clover doesn't attract nearly as many pests and stuff like that for whatever reason. I guess it's because it doesn't get as high. Clover is a really good feeder species for rabbits, deer, different kinds of birds that will feed on the bugs that are attracted. The obviously dozens of different insect species that are attracted by the flowers and the foliage. They provide a really unique microclimate under their leaves, where things are much more standard kind of average temperatures. I mean, clover is really like fucking the fact that clover is not the standard plant that is established as a lawn is actually kind of sad to me. Plus the cute purple flowers that you can eat, yeah. So what happens if that Florida student is sentenced for joking about Netanyahu as a freedom of speech dad? As far as I know, Netanyahu does not have American citizenship, so how do alleged threats become arrestable? Yeah, I have no idea. I guess at that point, freedom of speech pretty much is dead, yeah. Like, how can you trust that you have free speech if there are American students being arrested and prosecuted for saying shit about a politician that doesn't even live here? So yeah, that would effectively be the death of free speech, which has been dead for a while. Oh, if only Mr. Hitchens could see us today. That's another thing that strikes me about this book. I keep reading and rereading, or listening to and re-listening to, however you want to phrase it, is that there was a time in American history where, like, the cause for freedom of speech was very well, how do I put it? There was a time in American history where the argument for freedom of speech was still incredibly important to people, where there were still very ardent defenders of it, and where the many and varied defenders of it were pretty much in concert about the facts of the argument, regardless of how they presented the regardless of how they presented it. It always felt like the facts were, for all these people, this more or less the same. And today, I don't feel like there are really any advocates for freedom of speech left. And I can't really blame the people on the left for that feeling, I guess, on some level. I can understand their reticence when things are as dire as they are. It is starting to seem very much like if we don't get a handle on things, like there might be irreversible mistakes being made. But on the other hand, I just always have this feeling like this could go wrong, this could get used against us, this isn't the way we should go. You get the idea. Where did all the free speech go? Maybe this will all work out. Yeah. Free speech isn't really a left issue. The left is okay with dropping free speech when needed, i.e. countering American-funded propaganda. I mean, maybe some people on the left are okay. I'm not. Ow. I think that the best way to counter propaganda is with counter propaganda. Ow, 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 ow. I wish I would quit hurting myself. That'd be nice. like in Cuba, Vietnam, etc. I mean, I feel like in the case of Cuba, part of the reason why they've been able to manufacture consent for the possible ramping up of conflict with Cuba is because Cuba was very repressive about free speech when it came to any kind of message that was perceived as being American funded propaganda. And as noble as I think the idea might have been to preserve the gains of the revolution and prevent the ruination of better future outcome by people hostile to the movement, I think that a better approach would have been to continue working on what these countries were doing so well and make those projects even better and counter the propaganda with propaganda of their own that demonstrates the visible and real progress that they were making, like for example in Cuba's case in medicine. Sometimes the money is too much to counter, thus the silencing of it. I mean, at a certain point, like, there's only so much money you can throw at a thing without it becoming illegal by virtue of, like, you're bribing politicians or something. And at that point, you're not talking about suppressing free speech, you're talking about something else. I don't know, man. I just feel like we have a different opinion on it, but I recognize that I'm in the minority when it comes to the modern American left on this position. And it's like free speech isn't, like, I feel like the way you worded your original comment kind of implies that that it's a right-wing issue, or that it's I don't know. You said it's not a left-wing issue. Maybe I shouldn't assume that you mean that it's a right-wing issue, but it kind of implied that a little bit. And I bristle at that idea because I don't think the right wing cares about it either. I think the right wing cares about free speech when they can use vague calls towards free speech as a shield for their right to be bigoted, for their right to push for ridiculously pro-corporate narratives, etc., etc. And then when it comes to trans kids and books, or being able to access care, it's all of a sudden like free speech doesn't matter, free expression doesn't matter, and it's all out the window. And I feel like that shows you what the danger of having a principle which is too relativistic in nature is. Like, any principle which cannot bend but only breaks, I think, is, under pressure, is to that extent a bad one. But I don't know. I didn't mean to imply that. Obviously, the right uses free speech as a weapon. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, we understand on that level. And I'm not trying to be adversarial with you, Dirty. I just like, I like it when one of me and my regulars disagree, On American propaganda, they started the separatist movement in Alberta. I'm fine with silencing them to defend my fellow citizens' brains. I mean, doesn't that speak quite insultingly to the fucking stupidity of your fellow Canadians? If you guys are, oh man, I don't want to say this because it's gonna make you hate me. Okay, this is a joke. Preface, this is a joke. If Canadians are so fucking stupid that dumbass, astroturfed American propaganda can convince them to start a separatist movement to join us, maybe they would be better off. Maybe they would be better off under United States control. See, that's, I just, I can get to the argument here in a minute, but I just feel like it speaks very, insultingly to the intelligence of your fellow Canadians that you're so terrified about the gullibility of them to take over by fascist America. I can't help but find it a little amusing, especially considering that I, as an American, like to think of you guys as overall being, on the whole, quite a bit smarter than us. It's only like 10% of them, but it's still concerning. Well, that tells you everything you need to know. Fucking America's throwing money and effort at this fucking practice to start a separatist movement, and they got like 10% of the beleaguered Canadian population, freezing and shivering as they are, to agree with their fucking harebrained scheme. So, you know? It feels to me like in an instance like that, you would do a favor to the separatist movement by silencing them, by making them, like, by giving credence to the idea that they are some kind of victimized group opposed by the powers that be, you know? Canada would be owned by France. Changed my mind. Oh, shit. It's a very real possibility we may be playing by the rules of a certain game to try and make things better, but the people who want us to lose that game don't care about the rules. That's true. That's true. And our insistence upon the rules kind of fucks us sometimes. Yeah. I'm getting to a very philosophical age in my life, and I hope that doesn't sound too pretentious, but I was just thinking about how that really is like one of those fundamental questions, isn't it? Like, do the ends justify the means? The idea that the ends cannot justify the means, that the means have to be justified in themselves by writ of their own action, is one of the bases upon which the Democratic Party bases its ongoing policy of trying to only operate within the established rules of the democracy. But it's actually fucked them in quite a few ways. And if history is to give us an example of how people are looked at in retrospect, we can use the example of Nazi Germany to surmise that liberal parties which enable fascism through their inaction or their elitism or whatever are not typically remembered well. I gotta go write code. Well, you have a good night, Josiah. I'm getting to a very John Brown stage in my life. Ooh, shit, Inky Capelli. Them being the separatists, I agree, silencing them will just make them feel more validated. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Let me see here. Let me see what you're saying. That's an important thing I should clarify. Not silencing them, but stopping the Opinion Pieces Billionaires Fund. Stopping the Opinion Pieces Billionaires Fund. How about this, Dirty Dan? A compromise solution. The government of Canada says, okay, we're not going to stop you from putting these pieces out there, but you have to, if you're going to publish them, you have to clearly identify the chain of funding in a place of prominence near the headline. You can write whatever you want inside the article. We will not suppress your freedom of speech, but you have to declare that it's funded by a billionaire. in America that wants this to happen and is like trying to buy your vote. So that way, freedom of the speech, freedom of the speech shows you how much I care about it. No, I'm kidding. Freedom of speech and freedom of the press are not invalidated, and neither is the intelligence or goodwill of the Canadian people subverted by dishonest media reporting. Oh. Phoebe gonna look at this and be like, what? That would also work. George was right. Make people wear the logos of the orgs funding them, like in NASCAR. Yep. Yep, 100%. Yeah, I know. It's a fake Bible quote from Pulp Fiction. I know. But yeah, I'm not kidding, dude. George Carlin was onto something when he said that if you just made politicians wear a NASCAR-esque suit with the names and logos of all the billionaires and corporations that supported their campaign and funded their rise to power, things would improve. He wasn't kidding. And I think that the same is true, taken more seriously and literally, if applied to, like, all of the ways that people preserve power and project it in the modern day. I mean, we really need to start holding people to some account. And I think that transparency, like, here's the thing. I don't think it restricts the freedom of the press to demand transparency out of that press. I think you would have to demonstrate that there is a demonstrable danger to either the what the hell am I hearing? Anyway, I think you would have to demonstrate that there's either like a demonstrable danger to the press or like the people that work there itself, or a demonstrable danger to the public good that is served by the reporting to qualify some kind of action as a true violation of freedom of the press. And I don't think that requiring news agencies to declare their funding chains and shit like that would violate that. But I don't know. I'm getting really fucking tired. Also, I like the Pulp Fiction quote more than the one in the Bible. That's true. The Pulp Fiction quote is more badass. There's no arguing that. Oh, I hate to say it, guys, but we are growing close to the end of the wood that I have out here. And, getting kind of late. So I might get out of here pretty soon, guys. I am glad we were able to make a little bit of money tonight. I honestly wasn't kind of expecting it just because I needed a chill night, you know? Honestly, I was too stressed out to fucking properly elucidate it, Matt, but this, I think, is what I needed more than anything. It's just the night to kind of reset a little bit and not do this stream with a whole bunch of expectation in my mind. And yet I somehow managed to come out of it with a little bit of money anyway, and that's awesome. You know, I think one of the things that prepared me to be able to do this as a job was living on the road and spending so many hours, pretty much every single day, busking. But now, instead of singing my heart out, now I just talk my heart out. And occasionally I'll sing a little bit. I'm kind of glad Canada, most hardcore fascists migrate south. Sucks for you guys having to deal with the countless Canadian Nazis. Yeah, what is about that anyway? Is it just because we're the most, like, openly fascistic country that's close to you guys? I guess that speaks pretty ill of America, huh? America, America, God sheds his waste on me. Oh, man. Sorry, I just got, like, lost in thought for a second. J.P. Lawrence, Southern, Steven Crowder, list goes on. Probably, yeah. That's what I would assume. I mean, like, what else would you think, you know? But yeah, Jordan Peterson's the worst of them, by the way. You guys owe us a debt for sending Jordan Peterson's dumbass down here. And I don't even know how high that debt is. I don't know if it can be calculated with, like, math that I'm able to do. That motherfucker has done irrevocable damage to the mind of American young men. Irrevocable and priceless. Untold. Poor JP is dying. Celebrate good times, come on. Celebrate good times, come on. Dun 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 dun. Celebrate good times, come on. Dun 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 dun. Celebrate good times, come on. Poor, he fled back to, oh, that's funny. You know, the American healthcare system, it really does need some reforms. I'm afraid I'm going to have to go back to Canada to properly receive the amount of medical care that I need. I'm in palliative care at this point. I'm dying. Soon you won't be able to hear my Kermit-esque voice as it begins to cry over the beauty of the universe. My whole life has been a Malthusian construct. Oh, shit. Your Peterson is better than Paul's? That's because I've listened to a ton of Peterson. Like, not only the guys making fun of him, but also just, like, kind of, like, looking at his interviews on my own and wondering, like, hate watching him, basically. Jordan Peterson's one of those guys I'll hate watch. Because I think he's just, I think, like, oppressively and obnoxiously stupid. And people, like, don't see through it because the average motherfucker has a vocabulary the size of a pea. So, like, you know, you could inscribe on, you know, you could inscribe on a watermelon with 1 millimeter text every word that the average human being knows. And, you know, I don't know how many watermelons I would require, but I know that it'd be more than one. Okay? And Jordan Peterson, it'd probably be 10. You'd probably need 10 watermelons to fill up the amount of fucking dumbass words and phrases that his highly learned ass has memorized. And that is the veil behind which he hides all of his bullshit. Literally, as soon as you understand that, you understand the pull of Peterson. You understand his whole shtick. He's got a voice that is somewhat compelling to listen to. He speaks very deliberately and uses a very impressive lexicon to talk about the things that he values. For example, when he talks about Twitter, he will talk about it in very certain terms. Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who. But yeah, once you figure out that basically Peterson's grift is just throwing in lots of big words and speaking deliberately and having a slightly interesting voice, it, like, the whole veil falls apart right then. His daughter is more insane than he is. LOL. Peterson dead before GTA 6. Rip, she's his power of attorney, I think. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, that's probably good, though, because I doubt very much that she's got the amount of charisma that her Dad did. Even if she does, I'm pretty sure the fucking Peterson movement dies with him, unless she really is like a carbon copy of him. If she's like, I haven't seen anything from his daughter, but if she's really like just the same way he is, with this expansive vocabulary and this tendency to speak somewhat slowly and deliberately and all that, like if she's got all that down, then maybe she'll be able to pick up the Peterson audience. What I imagine will happen is that the Peterson phenomena will die with Peterson, and that little Peterson S. Jr. will become something else entirely. But I don't know that entirely. I don't know that for sure. Oh my god, I want popcorn chicken, but it's very late at night, and if I make popcorn chicken right now, I will end up waking somebody up. Especially if I make it any of the ways that I would want to make it. So, it seems to me like my options are either I don't have popcorn chicken tonight and I just make some tomorrow, because I've got frozen popcorn chicken in the freezer. And I'm like, well, I could just, I could, like, grab the air fryer and set that up either outside or in my room or something, and then fucking cook it that way. But that's a lot of setup, and then that's a lot of cleanup, and then I have to do, like, 2 rounds of them to make sure that I get as many as I want, and then they're not going to be, like, evenly heated, and they're probably not going to be as crispy as I'd like them to be, but maybe they still would be, I don't know. So that's, like, one option, right? But that feels like an inferior option. I'm not going to lie. And then option 2 is that I wait until tomorrow, and I have them for lunch tomorrow. And that does sound like the more appealing option, I'm not gonna lie. But that means I have to find something else to eat tonight, because I'm hungry. I'm hungry and I want to eat something. There's sandwich stuff, apparently, I think. So I could make a sandwich. There's that. There's that. There's also the meat that I made for tacos. I made I don't know, I wanted to use the smoker to make something besides fucking generic fucking southern style barbecue. So I decided to look up a Mexican recipe for pulled pork, like you might use for tacos or burritos. And I found, well, okay, I'm not gonna lie, AI wrote me a recipe. I think I asked Gemini, like, or no, it was YouTube's AI-powered results feature. Wrote me the recipe, and it looked good, checked off all my mental boxes for what could turn out as a pretty good recipe, and I did it, and oh my fucking god, y'all, you have no idea how good this shit was. As it turns out, AI can cook. Or I can cook, following AI's directions. Because I didn't really use, like, the guide that it gave me that well. I just kind of, like, read it and read the ingredients list and kind of used it as an overview. I did measure according to the ingredients list so that I got an impression of how much each thing looked like as I'm putting it into the spice mix bowl. But I just kind of read over the process and basically did what it called for, but I just followed my own instincts. Phoebe, how can you call yourself a stoner if you don't make a 6-course meal? What? I do Mexican or Korean barbecue these days. That sounds so fucking good. For pulled pork, I make my own version of Hawaii style. Lots of fruit, sugar, and spice. Ooh. Oh, that sounds delicious. Oh, that sounds so good. That's not a bad way to have pulled pork. Honestly, there's basically no bad way to have pulled pork. My favorite way, ultimately always, is going to be traditional Memphis pit style pulled pork barbecue with that nice kind of barky outer crust that gets interspersed throughout the meat, and the perfectly smoked meat that has all this flavor imbued throughout it, and it's also tender and juicy, and all the fucking connective tissue is just broken down into its base components, and oh man, that shit's good. Oh my god. Hi Phoebe, do you make compost for your garden? I do. We do, yeah. Whenever we don't have much like grass, and we certainly don't have any like Bermuda grass or anything like that that we're maintaining as a regular unit. But to the extent that we have grass, when we cut it or maintain it, we always rake that up and put it on the compost pile. Whenever there's a particularly heavy harvest of leaves, sometimes we'll rake them up, or if there's leaves we want to get out of a specific area, we'll do that. We don't engage in like a universal leaf removal policy for the whole property. It's just like, like the leaves that we get out of the garden from raking and stuff like that, or from this area down here where we get the fire pit and everything, where we kind of need to keep the area where we're sitting exactly like it is. We don't really want the ground to get built up with leaf litter and then get soft and porous, because we want to maintain this as a somewhat natural, concrete-free, hard pan sitting area where you can have some chairs out here and shit like that and not sink into the mud even if it's rained the day before, because it stays pretty hard out here. The ground isn't nearly as porous, and there's not as many layers and aeration and shit, which can work out if you're only doing it in a specific spot for specific reasons, and if it's otherwise undisturbed, it can actually be a pretty good permaculture friendly way to keep a little retreat. So we will remove the area, we'll remove the leaves from under the 2 trees that I'm sitting under right now. We'll remove those leaves and put them on the compost pile. And any of the excrement from the livestock, except the pigs, I mean, if it's like whenever they're kept in the stable and whenever we clean out the stables, all of that goes on the compost. Kitchen scraps, we keep a little tub in the kitchen that we fill up, and every day we dump it into a larger bin that itself gets dumped weekly into the compost. So yeah. Make a compost pit, Chandler. Don't throw any food scraps away. So basically, yeah, if you're trying to start a compost pit, let me think here. So here's some general tips. Number 1, if it eats meat as a regular part of its diet, don't throw its poop on the compost pile if you intend to use that compost in the growing of vegetables intended for human consumption. In other words, no omnivore shit in the compost if it's compost for veggies. Now, if you're just going to use the compost, and any compost you give away is only going to be used for flowers, ornamentals, things like that, then it's fine. But any kind of omnivore shit usually needs a couple of years worth of like composting on their own before they will be rid of disease and shit like that, and the risks that come with that type of compost and using it as a source of fertilizer or as a source of building your general compost. So no dog shit, no cat shit, no pig shit. These things should continue to be thrown away. But food scraps, almost all of them, like Dirty Dan said, you can use some meat and fat in there whenever you've got like trimmings from a chicken or steak or whatever. You can throw that in there. What if you're not melting down for fat, obviously, and the remnants of melting down for fat even you can throw in there. But you should always be balancing it out with some amount of regular application of plant matter to balance it out and to cover it up. Another tip with compost is if you are putting something particularly stinky on the compost, find something that smells rather neutral and is mostly plant matter to put over it, and that will, number one, shield the smell a ton. It will really reduce the amount that smell is able to penetrate, but it also puts all of the microbes that are in what you threw out in contact with all of the plant matter, and it puts all of the microbes on the plant matter in contact with all the stuff that you just threw out. And as you do this, you build up layers, and some people do it once a month, some people do it multiple times a year, some people do it every week, but you should be semi-regularly turning your compost to kind of mix these layers in together. And it seems like counterproductive, like you're undoing your work, but you're really not. You're making sure that the insides of these layers get exposure to each other and start to mix well and decompose better. So make sure you're mixing it regularly. You can buy an auger at like Harbor Freight for like $150 that will fucking auger the fuck out of any compost pile you could get. In fact, that might be overkill. You could probably find one for $75. So, another thing, watering. If it hasn't rained for like 4 or 5 days, you might want to, give your compost pit a good soaking. Compost pits can get incredibly hot on the inside and it's not unknown for them to ignite themselves. So, it can be a pretty good idea to make sure that it stays moist. That's another reason why you should be turning it regularly too, to make sure that if too much heat is being generated, if spontaneous combustion does happen on the inside, that is broken up and given an opportunity to be put out by your watering, which you should do whenever you turn it. Let me think here. Any other tips I've got for compost? Here's one. Piss in your compost every so often. If you're not opposed to that kind of thing. Human urine is usually sterile, and what diseases it can have are typically not going to be able to survive in the conditions of a well-maintained compost, but the nitrogen that your urine provides as its base materials break down will be incredibly useful to the compost. As long as you don't do it too often, you won't oversaturate, and you will effectively water and fertilize your compost at the same time. I'm just curious because I've seen online says the ratio between carbon and nitrogen should be 3-to-1, but others have said 7-to-1. People all over be human waste for fertilizer. It's called night soil on the market. Yeah, I know, but it's real gross, man. No, dude, no. there are fucking things you can do to make human shit safe for use. But, like, listen, there's an old, and I'm familiarized with this because of Christopher Hitchens' book I've been reading, but there's an old saying in Chicago, if one wishes to have their trust in aldermen maintained, or or to retain an appetite for sausages, one should take care not to be in the vicinity when the former is being groomed or while the latter is being manufactured. And I've seen how the sausage is made, my friends. I've seen how the hot dog is made. And if things get through in that process, which is deeply regulated, and there are fines involved, and people that can go to jail, and all kinds of shit like that, then what trust can I possibly have in these, night soil fucking purveyors? None. Ow! 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 Okay, I'm done with the fire. I was saying it's gross. Okay, cool. They trade water and nutrients to keep pet plants at the feed so their root excretes what? Okay, cool. Right on. But anyway, yeah, no, Chandler, you'll see different things online about composting. Like, the science is there. You can look into the studies if you want to. They've been done. The University of Mississippi, or Mississippi State University, I forget which one it is. It's the good one. But they've done lots of fucking studies into this very thing, into composting as a practice, and the different shit. And I would look at a college for advice on this one, honestly, if you want to know like the specific ratios and shit. But here's, like, honestly, I have not found it useful, and my family has never found it useful in our practice of maintaining a compost pile to keep a very close eye on the numbered ratios of what we're putting into our compost. We just kind of, like, if we notice that it's starting to seem like there's way too many old coffee filters and tea bags and eggshells and kitchen scraps and shit on the compost, then we go rake some leaves or find some grass to cut or something like that, so that we've got some plant material to add to the compost. And if it seems like we haven't really added anything like these like super bioactive inputs and shit like manure or kitchen waste or whatever, then we'll go dump some of that and maybe get some manure out of the barn or whatever, add it on top, mix it in with some more plant material. You maintain it, you keep an eye on it, you add to it as you have to, you turn it when you can, and you water it whenever it seems a bit dry, and you keep on about that same pattern until it's reduced to about 1/10 of its original height. And at that point, you're left with this wonderful soil amendment we call compost. One thing you'll definitely want to get if you start regularly working with compost is a sifter, a soil sifter, one that operates on wheels. They sell them online. I'm sure we've got one that I think was custom built for us, but I'm sure you can get them online. But it's basically just a big canister with a lid on one end and a handle on the other. And you fill up the canister with dirt, and then you turn it with the handle, and it rolls on these wheels over a big bin. And it works with a bunch of different sizes of bin, but you do that, and it basically separates the usable compost, which is small and granular, from the rocks and wood chips and bones and anything like that might be in there that has not broken down yet and can be, in fact, re-added to the new compost pile in that same place or at a new place in order to jumpstart basically all the microbes and everything. It's fascinating how it works. It really is fascinating to learn about, and if it already grasps your attention, then look into it more. I'm trying to overthink it. I'm just worried about my plants dying this summer. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's a bit, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit late in the season to be trying to like formulate a compost that will be ready by summer. I mean, you can try, and if it's a small enough pile and you're dedicated enough to the practice, I mean, you can get it to work. You can make that work, like, you can do it. And you know what? It actually might be a fun experiment one of these days for me to do, like, a single bin compost design where I, like, drill holes into the bottom of a big, one of those big Rubbermaid tubs or whatever, and then start filling it with the things I would normally put in the compost, but just smaller amounts. Build it up slowly, stir it regularly, stay on it, and see how quick can I make a full turnaround on this compost pile happen. So, and what I consider a full turnaround is you fill up the pile, you know, while stirring it regularly and mixing it up regularly to the best of your ability, you know, in the beginning and all that. You build up your pile as much as you can, and when it gets to its maximum, then you decide, okay, that's the maximum, and from that point, it needs to get to 1/10 of its size from where it is, or like 1/5 of its size. I forget what the metric is, but it needs to shrink massively from that point. And I would love to do an experiment with the tub to see exactly how quick I can get a complete turnaround on a very small compost bin. Oh no, I use it just to make compost tea to fertilize the soil. Once a week. I don't have a full-on garden. Okay, well, right on, right on. Yeah, I mean, if you're using it to make compost tea, I would... If you're using it to make compost tea and you're not intending on, I don't know, man. I would be cautious about letting meat and fat get into the compost if you're planning on using it for that, because I could imagine that that could contribute to quite an oily compost tea, and quite a rancid and rank compost tea as well. But that might be the only piece of advice I'd switch up on you. Anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and go, guys. I know it's been a lovely conversation, and I've been having fun, but the fire is dead, and so is my will to continue streaming, so I'm going to see you guys later. Thank you guys for hanging out, as usual. The turning is to get rid of excess heat, right? Well, yeah, well, it's to get rid of excess heat, but it's also to introduce the different microbes and different parts of the compost to each other, and to introduce plant material that has not gotten the benefit of all this microbe activity into the vicinity of plant material that already has that microbe activity on it. It's about familiarizing all the pieces with each other, getting rid of excess heat, and aerating the compost to make sure that there is enough space between all the component parts for the mycelium to form, for water to get through, for air to pass through, for small creatures, worms, bugs, crickets, things like that to get through, etc. Anyway, good night. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for donating. I will see you guys around some other time. Bye.